Melissa, it must have been pretty chaotic down there.
Renata, there were hundreds of emergency responders on scene trying to figure out what may have caused the blast. The house was completely obliterated. Tons of pink insulation covered the ground and trees, and even neighbors' windows were smashed in. But one of the most compelling things I found was that people are willing to put their lives in danger to save others. The farmers I spoke with hope the House votes on a bill during a mid-November lame duck session, but they're not getting their hopes up. Live in the studio, Melissa Parrelli, WENY TV News. Apple growers had a pretty tough season. That April frost prevented 60% of trees from pollinating because the blossoms froze. Then a dry summer kept apples from growing to normal size, and hailstorms put holes in whatever was left. Some of the people I spoke to said that they pretty much had their presidential choice made before Ryan was even named, but others are waiting for the conventions before they make a final decision. Investigators say after Davis is arraigned in the town of Avoca court, he will be turned over to police in Mazadin, Wayne County, where he's accused of stealing a car. Live in the studio, Melissa Parrelli, WENY TV News. Since the In-State Equity Program was founded in 2000, there have been 258 investments in New York companies, and they've raised nearly $4 billion in capital. A few customers told me that they were inside the store just minutes before the robbery took place, and they were worried knowing that Matt, the owner, as well as 2 female employees were working at the time. Now, this bottle that I have here in my hand is actually filled with lake water. It looks pretty clear, and lifeguards tell me the only reason the lake itself looks green is because of the algae and the seaweed at the bottom. 53 people were housed here last night at the shelter, and as you can see behind me, volunteers are spending their time sanitizing cots because more people are expected to come in throughout the day. Every year, over 240 million vehicles travel on U.S. highways. Every time you turn on your engine, the exhaust coming from this pipe could potentially be life-threatening. Last year, tourism spending dropped by nearly $1 million in New York City. But Kramer says his reality tour didn't take a hit. Paula's apartment building is serving as a poll site for 5 election districts today, but it's also home to roughly 300 individuals, 90% of which are legally blind and 10% mobility impaired. Now, Paula said inside, accessibility is fine for voters, but there's only one ballot marking device for the legally blind to use. You're right, Scott. They brought up everything from crop insurance to fair prices for milk, but there was one commonality across the board. Southern Tier farmers want a 5-year farm bill signed by the end of 2012. Renata, Anchor Glass has worked with the state for over a decade, but this specific program is a 7-year contract, which will allow businesses to better plan their future. It was hot out today, but that didn't stop people from lining up, costing them only a few bucks. Hawkrider is very pleased, to say the least, but he also says that he's not surprised that the budget passed this time. There's nothing left of the home but a pile of debris, and the stench of burnt wood and metal hung in the air as investigators sorted through the rubble. The rainy spring may delay some Red Sox games here at Fenway, but the real issue is whether or not BC men's ice hockey earned the nation's #1 spot in the preseason rankings, as well as the top vote in Hockey East. All eyes will be on the team to see if they can defend their national title. I'm Melissa Parrelli, and I'm going to bring you inside Terrier Nation's favorite athletes' homes. Agganis Arena is the home of Terrier hockey, and everyone comes here to watch the team play during the season. You guys were traveling, it was really hectic. You guys get back. I know how routine it is for hitters. Just give me an assessment of what you guys, where the offense is right now in the season.
Well, I think we started off pretty well.
At the time, I was in Tucson and Sean was in Phoenix, and we had tried all our lives to stay as close as we could during the season.
With the Red Sox, the Celtics, and the Patriots, the Bruins are the 4th Boston sports team to make it to the playoffs this year. Fans will just have to wait and see if yet another championship can be brought home to Boston. From the Boston Garden, I'm Melissa Parrelli.
Melissa, it must have been pretty chaotic down there.
Renata, there were hundreds of emergency responders on scene trying to figure out what may have caused the blast. The house was completely obliterated. Tons of pink insulation covered the ground and trees, and even neighbors' windows were smashed in. But one of the most compelling things I found was that people are willing to put their lives in danger to save others.
There were 3 fires started, and we got them out, and they were badly burned, but they were alive.
Dave Dan came home on lunch break today and ended up being a hero. He lives down the street from the explosion, and when he saw people running away shouting, "Call 911, he immediately ran to the scene and joined forces with another neighbor.
We were hollering, "Is anybody in there? Is anybody in there?" And then we heard them hollering, help us." and then we went in and got them.
They found the 2 victims, an elderly man and his adult grandson, trapped under tons of debris, screaming in pain.
We moved a lot of the debris out of the way, and then I grabbed their arm and pulled them out. And by that time, the fire department showed up, and I handed them off to the fire department.
The victims were able to walk out, but were severely burned on the face and arms and immediately flown to Upstate Medical Center in Syracuse. The explosion was so powerful, it not only wiped out this house completely, but it literally shook Corning. Neighbors I spoke to who live several blocks away said they felt the blast from their living room.
I was sitting in my living room and all of a sudden, bang, my house shook. I thought someone had slammed the door downstairs.
People working miles away also felt the explosion.
I was sitting in a meeting with just one other person, and all of a sudden there was a big boom, and we felt the building shake.
More than 100 police, fire, and emergency responders were at the scene and said the explosion blew out neighboring windows and doors and even made one house uninhabitable.
We have searched the neighborhood, searched every house, make sure there isn't any gas emergencies or any other serious damage. There is serious damage to a couple of the neighbors' houses, one of them that has been condemned already.
Just glad they're alive. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Responders on scene today had to wait to dig around until they got the okay from the Public Service Commission. Fire officials say the earliest they may know of a cause could be tomorrow morning. Live in the studio, Melissa Parrelli, WENY TV News. JB, it was a hot one today, so there were plenty of people by the water in Watkins Glen. A few visitors I spoke to were bothered by the green, murky color of the water, but the majority felt it was completely normal for a lake.
It's disgusting.
That's what some people are saying about the water at Seneca Lake's Clute Park. For the past few weeks, the color has been noticeably greener and murkier than usual.
The green color is disgusting because you can barely see what you're doing.
But it doesn't bother everyone.
It doesn't smell, the water seems fine, so I don't believe there's any reason to care about it.
I haven't come up here since I was a kid. You know, it's kind of like second nature. As far as green goes, I don't see no green. You just got a lot of, there's no rain, you know, and this is how it's going to be.
Now this bottle that I have here in my hand is actually filled with lake water. It looks pretty clear, and lifeguards tell me the only reason the lake itself looks green is because of the algae and the seaweed at the bottom. Lifeguards say rain washes the seaweed out, but the dry weather is causing it to build up, just as the strong sun and heat are making algae grow. They also say the untouched water is clear in the mornings, but the wind blows debris to the end of the lake throughout the day, and people splashing around stirs things up from the bottom.
Well, I'm here just about every day, and you know, like I said, with the high winds and everything, and when you get a lot of waves, it really churns up the water, and that seems to be the cause.
Despite some complaints, lifeguards believe there's no reason to worry.
If anything seems out of the ordinary, we don't hesitate to close the park and really check it out.
Lifeguards say there's nothing they can personally do about the murky water, and it's perfectly fine to go swimming in. Live in the studio, Melissa Parrelli, WENY TV News. Renata, people at the shelter felt very grateful that the city of Elmira has such a great resource for them during this time of need.
My wife's handicapped, she's in a wheelchair, so someplace for her to go is great, you know, and so definitely a blessing.
Brian Hostrander and his wife were forced to stay at the Red Cross shelter last night at Elmira Free Academy. They live at St. Joe's Apartments in Elmira, where the storm blew in windows, demolished cement walls, snapped lamp posts, and knocked out power.
When the power flicked out, the fire alarm reset and went off, so the alarms were going off for 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes, and a lot of people were freaking out, thought there was a fire.
Residents had to evacuate the building. Some with prior medical conditions were brought to Arnott Medical Center, while the rest were bused to the shelter.
They provided us with water, shelter, you know, a place to sleep, and, you know, basic necessities to keep yourself clean.
Dandy Mini Mart and Wegmans donated food and water so evacuees had something to eat and drink. 53 people were housed
Do a
here
good
last
job
night at the
shooting,
shelter,
like,
and as you
letting
can
to
see
your
behind me,
video.
volunteers are spending their time sanitizing cots because more people are expected to come in throughout the day.
We'll remain open as long as they need us, and the EMO, Emergency Management Office, say that we have to stay open.
The Red Cross says the shelter will remain open through Saturday. Donations are always welcome at redcross.org. Live in the studio, Melissa Parrelli, WENY TV News.